Hello everyone, welcome to Sleep Space. Tonight we will talk about a question that hides quietly inside philosophy, neuroscience, and even physics. Are you experiencing life for the first time? It might sound strange, even unsettling, but once you start to peel it apart, this question becomes a doorway to some of the most fascinating mysteries about consciousness, time, memory, and what it means to exist. So get comfortable, let your thoughts slow down, and allow yourself to explore this mystery with me. Before we dive deeper, I'd love to know, what time is it for you right now, and where are you tuning in from? Imagine for a moment that this is not your first time living this life. Imagine that everything you are experiencing now, every detail, every sensation, every challenge, and every joy has already happened. And yet for you, it feels new, fresh, and alive. Could it be possible that life isn't linear, that we aren't simply moving from birth to death like a straight arrow, but instead are caught in a looping or repeating structure of reality? Scientists, philosophers, and spiritual traditions have all wrestled with this question in different forms. Tonight, we'll unravel these ideas in a way that is clear, grounded in science, but also open enough to stretch your imagination. The very first question we have to ask is, what does it mean to experience something for the first time? On the surface, it seems obvious. You are alive now, and everything you perceive in this moment is new because you've never been here before. You've never been in this exact configuration of space and time, surrounded by these specific conditions, feeling exactly the way you do right now. From this perspective, yes, of course, you are experiencing life for the first time. But underneath that apparent simplicity, the question becomes tangled. Because we have to ask, what if time doesn't work the way we think it does? What if consciousness isn't confined to a single linear existence? Science already gives us clues that time and experience aren't as straightforward as they appear. Einstein's theory of relativity showed us that time is relative, not absolute. It bends and stretches depending on your frame of motion and your position in gravity. This means that the flow of time you experience is not a universal rhythm, but a local one. If someone else is moving quickly or sitting closer to a massive gravitational body, their clock ticks differently than yours. So if time is a relative, then the experience of first and now becomes more complicated. To one observer, this moment might be unfolding for the first time, but to another, the sequence may look stretched or shifted. Already, the foundations of what we call first experience begin to wobble. Now let's bring in neuroscience. Your brain is a machine of prediction. It doesn't just passively receive information from the outside world, it actively constructs your experience of reality. Every moment you are perceiving is stitched together by your brain, using a mixture of incoming sensory data and memories of past experiences. This means that what you call the present is in many ways a recycled pattern. Your brain predicts what's likely to happen based on what it has already encountered, and then it fills in the gaps. This is why you sometimes misremember events or fill in missing details incorrectly. Your mind is not simply recording reality like a camera, it is actively constructing it like a storyteller. So, from a neurological perspective, even this first time might not be so first at all. Your brain is pulling from the past to generate what you experience as the present. But here's where things get stranger. Neuroscientists have studied a phenomenon called déjà vu, the eerie sense that you've experienced something before, even though you know you haven't. Déjà vu happens to most people at some point in their lives, and it reveals something profound. Your brain can make the present feel like a repeat. One theory is that déjà vu occurs when your brain's memory systems misfire, sending a new experience into the circuits usually reserved for old memories. Another possibility is that it comes from a slight delay between the two hemispheres of the brain, so that one side registers the moment a fraction of a second before the other, creating the illusion of repetition. But regardless of the cause, déjà vu proves that your sense of firstness can be easily tricked. If a small hiccup in your brain can make the present feel recycled, then what if, on a larger scale, your entire experience of life is less about the first time and more about re-encountering patterns that your consciousness has seen before? Philosophers have pushed this idea even further. Friedrich Nietzsche proposed the concept of eternal recurrence, the idea that everything in the universe repeats infinitely. According to this thought experiment, your life, exactly as it is, has already been lived countless times and will be lived again, endlessly. Every joy, every sorrow, every thought you have will return over and over in a cosmic cycle. To Nietzsche, this was not just a scientific speculation, but a psychological challenge. Could you live your life as if you were willing to experience every moment again, forever? If so, you would embrace your existence completely. If not, you might feel crushed by the weight of eternal repetition. Even if eternal recurrence is only an idea, it forces us to confront the question: are we truly living something new, or are we trapped in an endless loop? Physics also leaves room for this possibility. The laws of thermodynamics tell us that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. Everything you are, every atom in your body, has existed since the birth of the universe. The carbon that makes up your cells was forged in the heart of stars that exploded billions of years ago. The water in your body has circulated through oceans, clouds, rivers, and living creatures for eons. From a material perspective, nothing about you is new. You are a temporary arrangement of ancient particles. If matter and energy are eternal, could consciousness itself also be a recurring phenomenon? Could your awareness be recycled in ways you cannot remember, so that life feels like the first time, even if it isn't? Some modern thinkers in quantum physics speculate about this too. Quantum mechanics suggests that reality is not a single, fixed path, but a superposition of possibilities. At the smallest scale, particles do not exist in one place until they are observed. They exist as a spread of probabilities, collapsing into a single outcome only when measured. If reality is fundamentally probabilistic, then perhaps your life is not a single run-through, but one of countless potential paths that your consciousness navigates. In this sense, you could be experiencing one branch of your life for the first time, while other versions of you are simultaneously experiencing different outcomes. Is it really the first time if infinite versions are happening at once? Or is firstness simply a trick of perception, bound to whichever timeline you happen to be aware of? Let's take another angle: memory itself. What if the reason life feels like the first time is simply because you don't remember having lived it before? Imagine waking up each day with no memory of yesterday. You would think each morning was your first time seeing the sun, hearing music, or tasting food. Memory creates the illusion of continuity, binding your moments together into a coherent story. Without it, every experience would feel fresh, unconnected to what came before. Some philosophers argue that if consciousness can be reborn, the lack of memory between lifetimes would make each feel like the first, even if it isn't. This leads to a strange paradox. Maybe you are not experiencing life for the first time, but it doesn't matter, because without memory, each time will always feel new. Even biology hints at this pattern. Consider the fact that your body is constantly regenerating itself. Cells die and are replaced. The lining of your stomach renews every few days. Your skin regenerates every few weeks. And even the skeleton you think of as permanent is replaced over the course of about a decade. You are not the same physical being you were 10 years ago. Your body is in a constant cycle of death and rebirth, yet your mind strings this together as a continuous first life. In a way, you are already experiencing many first times inside your own body without even noticing. All of this leads us back to the central question. If matter is recycled, if time is relative, if memory is selective, and if consciousness may not be confined to a single linear journey, then perhaps the concept of first time is less rigid than we assume. Maybe the real mystery isn't whether this is your first life or not, but why it feels like the first. Why does existence feel immediate, vivid, and unprecedented? What is it about consciousness that makes it cling to the present moment as if it were the only one? As we begin to unpack this tonight, remember that this is not about having a final answer. It is about opening your mind to possibilities that are bigger than the everyday assumptions you carry. The question, are you experiencing life for the first time, invites us to rethink what it means to be alive, to be aware, and to be part of a universe that may be stranger than we ever imagined. If we want to truly explore whether you are experiencing life for the first time, we need to look deeper into how consciousness itself works. Because ultimately, the sense of newness or repetition doesn't come from the outside world. It comes from the way your awareness interprets reality. The universe has existed for billions of years before you were born, and it will continue long after you're gone. Yet, for you, existence begins the moment you wake into awareness and say, I am. That instant is the ignition of your reality. But is that spark something unique to this life? Or does it happen again and again in ways we can't easily measure? One of the most compelling ways to think about this comes from the study of the brain's default mode network, or DMN. This is a collection of brain regions that activate when you are not focused on the outside world, when you are daydreaming, remembering the past, imagining the future, or reflecting on yourself. It is, in many ways, the seat of your sense of identity. Studies of the DMN show that it weaves together your story of who you are. Without it, you would not have a coherent sense of self. But here's the strange part. The DMN is also responsible for generating the illusion of continuity. It takes the scattered fragments of experience and memory and stitches them into what feels like a single timeline. Could it be that this stitching process makes you believe you're experiencing life for the first time, when in reality you're just inhabiting another cycle of consciousness that has played out before? Consider how fragile this sense of continuity is. In cases of amnesia, when memory is disrupted, people can lose their connection to past identity, but still wake each day with a feeling of firstness. Every moment feels as though it's happening fresh. You can see from this that the sense of novelty is not an absolute truth. It's a perception. And if perception is what defines whether something feels new or repeated, then the possibility of having lived before becomes even more intriguing. Maybe you have lived countless lifetimes, but the lack of continuity between them convinces you that this is the first. This also brings us to the concept of time loops in physics and philosophy. Some theoretical models of the universe suggest that time may not be strictly linear, but cyclical. The arrow of time, which we normally associate with entropy increasing, may itself be an emergent property rather than a fundamental one. In a closed system, once every possibility plays out, the system can return to its original state, starting the cycle again. If the universe itself is cyclical, expanding and collapsing in infinite cycles of birth and death, then perhaps consciousness too is caught in these loops. You are here now because the cycle has reached this point again. To you, it feels like the first time, but on a grander cosmic scale, maybe you've been here before, living this same configuration of reality countless times. There's also the fascinating concept of information theory. Claude Shannon, who developed the mathematical foundation of information science, showed us that everything, language, signals, even genetic code, can be reduced to information. Modern physics has extended this idea, with some scientists proposing that the universe itself is fundamentally made of information. If that's true, then you, your mind, your experiences are patterns of information playing out. And here's the key: information can be repeated. Just as the same sequence of numbers can be generated more than once, the same pattern of consciousness could arise again, given the right conditions. You may feel unique, but what if your consciousness is like a melody that can be played again on the cosmic piano? Each time it's played, it feels like the first time to the listener. But in reality, it's the same arrangement of notes repeating. This idea touches on simulation theory as well. Some scientists and philosophers, like Nick Bostrom, argue that it's possible our universe is a simulation. If advanced civilizations can create simulations of reality indistinguishable from the real thing, then statistically it may be more likely that we are inside one than not. And if that's the case, then your experience of life may not be the first time. It may be one of countless runs, reboots, or iterations of the same simulated structure. The data that forms you could be loaded again and again, each time feeling like the first, because you have no memory of the previous runs. But let's step back into biology for a moment. Think about how patterns repeat in nature. A seed grows into a tree, the tree produces seeds, and the cycle continues. Generations rise and fall, but the pattern remains. The specific tree may only exist once, but the structure of treeness repeats endlessly. In a similar way, your life may feel like a singular first-time event, but the pattern of being human, being conscious, being alive could be recurring endlessly. Each time the pattern arises, it feels new, but it's part of an ancient rhythm that has played out long before you and will continue long after. This connects with the study of genetic memory. While your conscious mind may not remember past lives or past generations, your DNA carries information from countless ancestors. Some researchers suggest that certain instinctive behaviors, fears, or preferences could be the result of inherited memory encoded in your genes. For example, why do so many people fear snakes or heights without ever having a bad experience with them? It may be that these fears were encoded by countless generations of ancestors who survived by avoiding dangers. In that sense, you are not experiencing life purely for the first time. You are carrying within you the echoes of millions of years of lived experience, folded into your biology. And then there is quantum biology, a relatively new field exploring how quantum mechanics may play a role in biological processes. Some scientists have speculated that quantum effects in microtubules, the structural components of cells, might be linked to consciousness. If that's the case, then consciousness might not be confined to the brain, but could be a fundamental aspect of the universe itself, arising whenever conditions are right. That would mean your particular awareness now might not be the first time you have existed in some form. It might instead be one of countless instances of consciousness that bubble up from the quantum fabric of reality, always feeling like the first because that's how awareness works. It knows only the present moment, not the sequence of moments that came before. Let's also bring in the concept of the multiverse. According to some interpretations of quantum mechanics, every possible outcome of every event exists in a vast branching structure of parallel universes. In this model, there isn't just one version of you, but countless versions, each living out different variations of your life. In one universe, you made a different choice that altered everything. In another, you never existed at all. If the multiverse is real, then you could say that you are both experiencing life for the first time and not. This timeline may be your first time in this branch, but other versions of you have already lived parallel variations. The boundaries of firstness dissolve when infinite copies of existence coexist simultaneously. The question then becomes, why does it matter? If you are experiencing life for the first time, or the billionth time, what difference does it make? From one perspective, it may not matter at all. Your subjective experience of now is what you have, and it feels real, fresh, and unprecedented. But from another perspective, the idea that this may not be the first time can change how you see yourself and your existence. If life is a repeating cycle, then perhaps mistakes are less final than they seem. If consciousness arises again and again, then perhaps there is a deeper continuity to who you are, even if you can't remember it. And if everything you are experiencing now has unfolded countless times before, then the choices you make may carry a weight you hadn't considered. Would you want to live this same moment again and again? To put it differently, asking whether you are experiencing life for the first time isn't just a scientific or philosophical question, it's a psychological one. It forces you to confront how you value your existence. If this is the only life you get, it's precious because of its singularity. If it repeats, it's precious because you must face it eternally. Either way, the question draws your attention to the immediacy of being alive, right now, in this moment. Science, philosophy, and spirituality converge on this point. Whether or not life is the first time, it always feels like it is. Consciousness is bound to the present moment, and in the present there is no memory of having lived before, no evidence of what might come after. This sense of firstness is not just a curiosity, it is the essence of what it means to be alive. To dig deeper into whether life is truly being experienced for the first time, we need to step into one of the most mysterious areas of human thought, the nature of consciousness itself. Because if your awareness is a one-time phenomenon tied only to this body, then yes, you're experiencing life for the first and only time. But if consciousness is something more fundamental, something woven into the fabric of the universe, then it could emerge again and again, each time unaware of its previous iterations. Let's start with what science can actually measure. Neuroscience tells us that consciousness is correlated with activity in the brain. Billions of neurons firing, exchanging electrical signals, and building networks of information create the patterns that you experience as thought, memory, and self-awareness. From this view, when the brain ceases to function, so does consciousness. This is the materialist position, and it would suggest that yes, you are experiencing life for the first time, and also the last. Your awareness is bound to your biological system, so when that system stops, so does the you, who is experiencing. But this view, while scientifically grounded, is not the whole picture, because even within neuroscience, there are unresolved mysteries. For example, no one can fully explain the hard problem of consciousness, a term coined by philosopher David Chalmers. The hard problem asks, why does brain activity produce subjective experience at all? You could map every neuron, every chemical reaction, and every electrical impulse, but that still doesn't explain why it feels like something to be alive. Why is there an inner world? Why does the firing of neurons give rise to the sensation of color, sound, or emotion? Until this gap is bridged, there is still room to ask whether consciousness might be more than just a byproduct of biology. Some theories push us in that direction. Integrated information theory, for instance, proposes that consciousness arises wherever information is integrated in a system. In this view, any system that processes information in a sufficiently complex way has some level of experience. That would mean consciousness isn't unique to humans, or even to animals with complex brains, but a fundamental property of organized matter. If that's the case, then your awareness might not be tied solely to this life. It could be that consciousness is a universal property that emerges again and again in different forms, always feeling new, always feeling like the first time, because each instance is self-contained. Another perspective comes from Pansychism, the philosophical idea that consciousness is a basic feature of the universe, like space, time, or mass. According to this view, even elementary particles have some primitive form of experience, and human consciousness is just a more complex arrangement of this fundamental quality. If panpsychism is true, then awareness is not something created by brains, but something brains channel and amplify. In that case, your experience of life right now might be one expression of a much older, deeper consciousness that has existed since the beginning of the universe. In this sense, you are not experiencing life for the first time at all. You are the universe experiencing itself again, through a new configuration. Quantum physics also feeds into this conversation. The famous double-slit experiment showed that particles behave differently depending on whether they are observed. This has led some physicists and philosophers to speculate that consciousness plays a role in shaping reality. If observation collapses the wave of probabilities into a single outcome, then consciousness may be more than just a byproduct of the brain. It could be a fundamental force, intertwined with the fabric of existence itself. If that's the case, then your current life may be one expression of a consciousness that continually participates in creating reality. Each iteration feels like the first because observation resets the stage. Now let's consider another angle: reincarnation. Many spiritual traditions hold the belief that consciousness continues after death, taking on new forms in new bodies. Buddhism, Hinduism, and various indigenous worldviews describe life as part of a cycle of rebirths. While science has not confirmed this, there have been thousands of reported cases where children claim to remember details of past lives, sometimes with startling accuracy. Researcher Ian Stevenson from the University of Virginia documented many such cases, where children recalled names, places, and events that were later verified. While these stories don't prove reincarnation, they open the door to the possibility that consciousness might persist and re-emerge in ways we don't fully understand. If this is true, then what you experience as the first time might simply be the first time in this particular body and context, not the first time your awareness has existed. But even without reincarnation, there's a way in which life is always both first and not first. Think about how your mind interprets new experiences. When you encounter something unfamiliar, your brain tries to match it to existing patterns. If it finds no match, the experience feels startlingly new. But if it connects to something familiar, it feels like repetition. Yet in reality, no two moments are ever identical. Even if you repeat the same action, like drinking a glass of water or walking down the same street, the details are different each time. The lighting changes, your body changes, your thoughts shift. Every moment is simultaneously unique and part of a pattern. Life, then, is always both first and not first. It's the first time you've lived this exact configuration, but not the first time you've lived at all, because living is a continuous unfolding. This duality is beautifully reflected in physics. The universe is governed by laws, patterns that repeat with remarkable consistency. Gravity pulls, atoms bond, light travels at a constant speed. And yet, within these repeating patterns, the outcomes are always unique. No two galaxies are identical. No two snowflakes are the same. The structure repeats, but the details never do. Perhaps consciousness works the same way. The structure of awareness repeats, giving rise to countless instances of life, but each one is unique in its details, making it feel like the first time. Memory again plays a central role here. Neuroscience shows that memory is not a perfect recording, but a reconstruction. Each time you recall an event, you rebuild it from fragments, often altering it slightly. Over time, the memory drifts further from the original. This means that even your own past experiences are, in a way, new each time you remember them. Your brain makes them fresh by reconstructing them differently. If your own memories are unstable, then your sense of continuity is more fragile than you think. And if continuity is fragile, then the feeling of firstness may be more about how memory functions than about reality itself. Consider also how dreams work. In dreams, you experience vivid realities that feel utterly new while you are in them. You don't remember having lived those dream worlds before, even though your brain is generating them from familiar elements. Each dream feels like a first-time experience, but it arises from recycled material. Could waking life function in a similar way? Could what feels like your first time be the latest iteration of consciousness generating a new scenario, built on old material you cannot consciously access? From a cosmic perspective, the idea of first may not even exist. In physics, time may not be fundamental. Some theories, such as those in quantum gravity, suggest that time itself emerges from more basic relationships between particles or information. If time is not fundamental, then the concept of first is an illusion created by consciousness moving through experience. The universe simply is, timeless and eternal. Your perception of moving through time, of having a first moment and a last, could be a construction of your awareness rather than a reflection of reality. All of this leads to a profound question. If you are not truly experiencing life for the first time, then who is the you that has lived before? Are you the same self returning again, or are you a new self that merely feels like the first? The answer may lie in understanding identity itself. What you call you is a bundle of memories, traits, and habits tied to a body and a brain. But if those memories and traits disappear, is the self the same? If consciousness can arise again in another form, would that new consciousness be you, or simply another instance of awareness? Perhaps the truth is that there is no permanent you. There is only consciousness arising again and again, each time believing itself to be unique, each time feeling like the first. This perspective can be unsettling, but it can also be liberating. If life is not truly the first time, then it is part of a much larger process, one in which you are a repeating pattern in an infinite universe. If life is the first time, then it is a precious singularity, never to be repeated. In both cases, the present moment holds extraordinary value. Whether it is your only time or one of countless times, it is still the only time you have access to right now. And that makes it profoundly important. If we want to continue examining whether you are experiencing life for the first time, we should look more closely at how perception, memory, and identity interact to create the illusion of newness. Because in many ways, what you call the first time is really the brain's method of orienting you within reality. And if that system can be fooled, reshaped, or interrupted, then the experience of firstness may not be as absolute as it feels. Let's start with memory. Think about the way your brain records information. Every moment you live is not stored like a video file you can play back. Instead, your brain encodes fragments. sensory details, emotional impressions, and key points of importance. When you recall a memory, your brain reconstructs the event by piecing those fragments together. It fills in the gaps using imagination and inference. That means every time you remember something, you are experiencing a modified version of the past. The past is not static, it changes depending on how you retrieve it. If memory is unstable in this way, then what you call first might not be entirely trustworthy. The feeling of newness could be a product of incomplete memory rather than an actual indication of novelty. Now consider the opposite phenomenon, déjà vu. When déjà vu occurs, you feel as if you are repeating something, even when you logically know you're not. It's a perfect example of how perception and memory can become untangled. Neuroscientists suggest it might happen when the brain's recognition circuits fire too quickly, creating the illusion that the present has already been stored as memory. In that instant, your sense of firstness collapses and you feel repetition where there is none. This demonstrates how delicate the balance really is. A small hiccup in brain function can completely alter your perception of whether something is new or not. This brings us to the question, if your brain can so easily misinterpret whether something is first or repeated, how do you know life itself isn't a kind of déjà vu on a much larger scale? Perhaps the feeling of "this is my first life" is just the brain's default setting. Perhaps beneath that setting, consciousness has lived countless lives, but because memory doesn't persist across them, each one feels fresh, like the first sip of water to someone endlessly thirsty. There are also fascinating cases in neuroscience that test the boundaries of identity. Consider split brain patients. In these rare cases, the corpus callosum, the bundle of fibers connecting the two hemispheres of the brain, is severed to treat epilepsy. What scientists found is that the two hemispheres can begin to function with separate awareness. For example, one hemisphere may see an image and the other may not, leading to conflicting behaviors within the same person. This suggests that consciousness is not a single unified stream, but something that can split, duplicate, and function in parallel. If awareness can be divided this way, then who is the you that is experiencing life? And if consciousness can split, could it also repeat? Could multiple instances of awareness, each believing it is experiencing life for the first time, exist simultaneously? From there, we can turn to the philosophy of identity. Derek Parfit, a British philosopher, argued that personal identity is not about a fixed soul or an unchanging self, but about psychological continuity and connectedness. He used thought experiments like teleportation. If you were teleported to another planet by a machine that disassembled your body and reassembled it elsewhere, would the person who appears on the other side be you? The new version would have all your memories and traits, but your original body would be gone. If the reassembled person insists they are you, who is correct? Parfit concluded that identity is not as rigid as we think. It's more about patterns continuing than about an unbroken line. Applied to our question, this means that even if life is not your first, the continuity of identity may not matter. Each instance of consciousness may feel first because it perceives itself as continuous, even if, on a cosmic level, it's a repeat. We can also examine this question through the lens of cosmology. The universe is about 13.8 billion years old, but in the grand scheme of physics, it may not be unique. Some theories suggest that our universe is part of a multiverse, a vast collection of universes with different laws, constants, and histories. If universes can exist in infinite numbers, then statistically, there could be universes identical to ours down to the arrangement of every atom. That means there could be other versions of you living this exact same life, experiencing it as if for the first time. In one universe, you might be watching this video on a different device or at a slightly different time. In another, you might not exist at all. If this infinite redundancy is real, then you are both first and not first. You are the unique version of yourself in this universe, but there are endless copies elsewhere. Physics also introduces us to the idea of Poincaré recurrence. This is a mathematical theorem stating that any finite system, given enough time, will eventually return to a state arbitrarily close to its original configuration. In other words, if the universe is finite and time is infinite, the arrangement of particles that makes up you will eventually reoccur. It might take trillions of years, but statistically, it's inevitable. When that happens, will another version of you awaken and feel it is experiencing life for the first time? If so, then your life may not be unique at all. It may be one of countless returns of the same configuration. Biology also provides us with echoes of repetition. Consider how your DNA functions. Your genetic code is not unique to you. It's a copy of countless ancestors' instructions for building life. Each generation is a remix of genetic material that has existed for billions of years. The traits that make you who you are, your eyes, your hair, even your predispositions, are not new. They've appeared before in countless combinations across evolutionary history. From this perspective, life is not a first-time event, but a continuation of a long biological story, with small variations each time. And yet, subjectively, it always feels like the first time. Why? Perhaps because consciousness is tied to the present moment in a way that erases all else. Awareness cannot directly access the past or the future. It only exists in the now. Even when you recall memories, you are recalling them in the present. Even when you imagine the future, you are imagining it now. This immediacy makes every moment feel unprecedented, because awareness itself has no continuity outside the moment it inhabits. The present is always new, and thus life always feels like the first time, no matter how many times it may have been lived. This leads us to the concept of phenomenology, the philosophical study of experience. Thinkers like Edmund Husserl argued that consciousness is not about objects or events themselves, but about how they appear to awareness. In this sense, your experience of firstness is a phenomenon of consciousness, not necessarily a reflection of reality. Life feels like the first time because consciousness structures it that way. It's less about whether you have lived before and more about how awareness constructs the sense of novelty. There is also a practical psychological angle to all of this. Many people, when asked to reflect on their lives, report feeling that time speeds up as they age. Childhood seems long and expansive, while adulthood rushes by more quickly. One explanation for this is that when you are young, more experiences are genuinely new, so your brain encodes them in detail. As you get older, more experiences become familiar, and your brain compresses them into fewer memory traces. The more newness you perceive, the longer time feels. This suggests that the experience of firstness shapes not only how you see your life, but even how you perceive time itself. Life may or may not be the first time in some cosmic sense, but psychologically, it is newness that makes life vivid and meaningful. All of this paints a complex picture. From neuroscience, we learn that memory is fragile and subjective. From philosophy, we see that identity is less about permanence and more about continuity of patterns. From physics, we discover that the universe may be cyclical, repetitive, or infinitely duplicated. From biology, we see that life is built on ancient instructions that repeat across generations. And from psychology, we learn that novelty shapes our perception of time and meaning. Put all of this together, and the question of whether life is the first time becomes less about absolute truth and more about perspective. If you view yourself as a singular biological organism, then yes, this is your first and only time. But if you step back into the larger frameworks of physics, philosophy, and cosmology, then no, this is not the first time. Consciousness, matter, and patterns of existence repeat endlessly, always arising in new configurations, always feeling new, because the present moment erases what came before. The deeper truth may be that both are correct. Life is the first time because it feels that way in your subjective awareness, and life is not the first time because the universe repeats, cycles, and reconfigures endlessly. You are both unique and recurring, both singular and infinite. The paradox is what makes the question so fascinating. If you stop for a moment and think about what it means to live for the very first time, you begin to notice something strange. There is an odd blend of familiarity and novelty that colours every aspect of our experience. Some moments feel like we've been through them before, almost like echoes from a story we already know, while others are completely alien, as if the world is revealing itself brand new. Philosophers and scientists alike have wrestled with this paradox, why life can feel simultaneously repetitive and unprecedented, as if we're caught in a loop, but also breaking free from it. If we are truly experiencing existence for the first time, why do so many aspects of it feel so deeply familiar? The answer takes us into the science of memory, perception, and the possibility of consciousness stretching beyond the boundaries of a single life. One way to approach this is to think about how the brain constructs the sense of déjà vu. Déjà vu is one of those mysterious quirks of the human mind where you're absolutely convinced you've seen or experienced something before, despite knowing that logically it's impossible. Neuroscience suggests this arises from a misfiring in the brain's memory system, where short-term experiences accidentally get processed as long-term memories. It creates a false sense of familiarity. But from another perspective, déjà vu could be interpreted as evidence that your consciousness has brushed against this moment before, whether in another lifetime or in some deeper pattern of reality. Science doesn't endorse reincarnation as proven fact, but the sensation points to how fragile and malleable our perception of firstness really is. You might think you are experiencing something for the very first time, but your mind can easily convince you otherwise. Beyond memory glitches, there's a broader question. Why does the universe appear intelligible to us at all? If we are genuinely brand new beings navigating existence for the first time, why are we equipped with brains that can recognize patterns, predict outcomes, and find meaning in randomness? The physicist Eugene Wigner once wrote about the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics in describing the physical world. Equations that humans devised in the abstract through sheer thought somehow describe planetary orbits, quantum interactions, and the flow of time with astonishing accuracy. This suggests that the human mind, rather than being a passive bystander, may be deeply woven into the structure of reality. If that is true, then your very first encounter with life may not be random at all. It may be pre-configured, as if consciousness and the cosmos are speaking the same language. This brings us to the idea of archetypes, a term Carl Jung popularized to describe the universal patterns and symbols that appear in myths, dreams, and cultures across the world. Think of the hero's journey, the wise mentor, the shadow figure, all recurring motifs across human storytelling. How is it that civilizations separated by oceans and centuries independently conjured up the same imagery and themes? Jung believed these archetypes emerge from the collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of psychological structures that transcends the individual. If that's true, then maybe the reason life doesn't feel entirely first time is because we are tapping into something ancient, a memory bank older than ourselves. When you encounter a moment that resonates deeply, as if you've been there before, perhaps you're aligning with one of these timeless archetypal currents. Life may be first time for you, but it might not be first time for consciousness itself. Modern science gives this idea a twist with the notion of genetic memory. Studies in epigenetics have shown that experiences, especially traumatic ones, can leave molecular marks on DNA that are passed down through generations. Experiments with mice have demonstrated that if one generation is conditioned to fear a specific smell, their offspring will also react with fear to the same odor, despite never having encountered it before. In humans, this opens the door to the possibility that some of our phobias, instincts, and intuitions are inherited echoes of lives lived long before ours. So when you walk into a situation and feel an inexplicable sense of recognition or dread, it might not be evidence of reincarnation, but rather the whisper of your ancestors' experiences encoded within your biology. That blurs the line between first-time living and inherited memory in fascinating ways. There is also the matter of how consciousness develops in infants. Newborns enter the world with remarkably advanced abilities. They show preferences for faces, can distinguish between different phonetic sounds from virtually every language, and demonstrate a surprising ability to imitate. These skills suggest that humans are not blank slates at birth, but instead come preloaded with cognitive templates. Developmental psychologists debate whether this is simply genetic programming or something more mysterious. If consciousness were entirely fresh with each birth, shouldn't we start with nothing? And yet infants arrive prepared, as if they've been here before in some hidden way. This leads some to speculate that consciousness may not originate in the brain at all, but rather filters through it, much like light passing through a prism. In that model, life could feel like both a first encounter and a continuation, depending on how much of that universal consciousness you're attuned to. Another angle to consider is time itself. We experience time as a linear sequence, past, present, future, but physics has long questioned whether that's just an illusion. The block universe theory, derived from Einstein's relativity, suggests that all moments of time exist simultaneously, like pages in a book. If that's the case, then your life isn't so much unfolding as it is being read, and every moment you call first is already inscribed somewhere in space-time. That changes how we think about first-time experience. From your subjective perspective, this is the only first time you'll walk into a new room, meet a person, or feel an emotion. But from the universe's perspective, those moments were always there, waiting for you to step into them. Your life may feel like a debut performance, but in the cosmic sense, it's more like a rereading of a story that has always existed. This idea becomes even more intriguing when we apply quantum mechanics. The many worlds interpretation posits that every possible outcome of every quantum event actually happens, branching off into parallel universes. That means there could be countless versions of you, each living slightly or vastly different lives, all experiencing their own first times. What you call first may simply be one path among an infinite forest of possibilities. You could be a beginner in this timeline while simultaneously an expert in another. In this view, the novelty of your experience isn't because you're genuinely brand new, but because you are one among infinite perspectives unfolding from the quantum fabric of reality. But perhaps the most profound aspect of asking whether this is your first time experiencing life is the way it changes how you relate to the present. If you assume it is truly your first and only time here, it heightens the importance of every moment. It suggests you should pay attention, savor experiences, and treat them as unrepeatable treasures. On the other hand, if you imagine that consciousness recycles, whether through reincarnation, ancestral memory, or parallel worlds, then the meaning shifts. Life becomes a chapter in a much larger narrative, one installment in the ongoing adventure of consciousness. Either way, the question reshapes how you value what's in front of you. The ordinary act of watching the sunrise, laughing with a friend, or hearing a song for the first time becomes a profound event, whether it's truly new or part of a cosmic replay. Think about how artists and scientists often describe their discoveries. They talk about moments of insight that feel less like invention and more like recognition, as if the melody, the equation, or the idea was always there, waiting to be uncovered. This sense of rediscovery blurs the line between first and not first. It implies that human creativity might be a process of remembering what consciousness already knows, rather than generating something entirely new. If so, then perhaps none of us are experiencing life for the first time. We are instead rediscovering it in fragments, piecing together an eternal puzzle that spans lifetimes and universes. In the end, the mystery may not be solvable, but the question itself transforms our relationship with existence. Are you here for the first time, or are you a continuation of something eternal? Science, philosophy, and spirituality all point in different directions, yet converge on one truth. The experience feels both new and familiar. It feels like being thrown into the unknown while also recognizing patterns that make sense. That duality might be the essence of what it means to be conscious at all. To live as though it is your first time, while sensing that it is part of something far greater, may be the truest expression of existence. One of the most fascinating aspects of questioning whether you are experiencing life for the first time is the role of probability. Think about the vastness of the universe, billions of galaxies, each containing billions of stars, many of which host planets that may resemble Earth. The statistical likelihood of life existing elsewhere is so high that many scientists consider it nearly inevitable. But if life can emerge in multiple places, it raises an even deeper question. Could a conscious being like you emerge more than once? And if so, would that mean you are destined to live again and again, in forms that resemble this life, or in lives that are completely different? To approach this, let's look at a concept called the infinite monkey theorem. The idea is simple. If you put a monkey in front of a typewriter and let it hit random keys forever, eventually it would type the complete works of Shakespeare just by chance. It would take unimaginable time, but given infinite attempts, all possibilities are realized. Now apply that same principle to the cosmos. If matter and energy keep rearranging endlessly across infinite space and time, then every possible combination of particles, including one that results in you, could emerge again. This isn't just poetic speculation. In some models of the universe, such as eternal inflation, infinite possibilities are not just possible, but inevitable. That means, in some distant part of the cosmos, another version of you may already exist, or might come into being. This idea brings us to the question of uniqueness. Are you a one-of-a-kind phenomenon, or are you one of many repeating patterns scattered across the cosmic landscape? From a scientific perspective, individuality comes from arrangement. The atoms in your body aren't unique. They've been around for billions of years, forming stars, planets, oceans, and organisms long before you were born. What makes you you is the exact configuration of those atoms and the firing of neurons in your brain. In an infinite or extremely large universe, configurations can repeat. That means there could be someone identical to you, with your memories, your personality, and your experiences existing somewhere else. And if that's the case, are you truly living for the first time? Or are you just one version of an endlessly repeating pattern? This concept becomes even stranger when you consider time. Our everyday experience makes time feel like it moves forward in one direction. But some theories in physics, such as the block universe model, suggest that all moments exist simultaneously, like frames in a film reel. From that perspective, your life isn't being experienced for the first time. It's already there, etched into the structure of space-time. You're simply moving through it, frame by frame. If every moment is permanent, then in some sense, your life has already happened, is happening, and will happen forever. You may feel like this is your first time experiencing it, but in the grand architecture of space-time, there is no first. There is only existence. This touches on another concept, recurrence. In the 19th century, philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche introduced the idea of eternal recurrence. The notion that the universe and everything in it repeats infinitely. He asked, if you had to live this life again and again, down to the smallest detail, would you embrace it or despair? Nietzsche's idea wasn't backed by modern cosmology, but it resonates with scientific theories like the Poincaré recurrence theorem, which suggests that given enough time, certain systems will eventually return to a state very close to their original one. In a finite but unbounded universe, recurrence may not just be possible, but inevitable. If that's true, then your life may repeat not just once, but infinitely. And each time you might feel like it's brand new. But what about memory? If you had lived before, wouldn't you remember it? Not necessarily. Memory is tied to the physical brain, and each time a life emerges, that brain starts fresh. You might carry no conscious recollection of past iterations. However, some people believe that flashes of déjà vu, dreams, or strange intuitions could be echoes of other experiences, whether from past lives or parallel versions of yourself. Science doesn't currently confirm these ideas, but they remain an open mystery that invites exploration. Let's step into quantum mechanics for a moment, because it adds another layer of complexity. In quantum theory, particles exist in superpositions until they're observed. That means reality is not fixed until measurement collapses possibilities into a definite outcome. Now imagine consciousness as a kind of measurement device. By observing reality, you help shape it. But what if every possible outcome of every choice you make actually branches off into its own version of reality, as suggested by the many worlds interpretation? That would mean there are countless versions of you, each living slightly different lives. If so, then this moment you're in might not be the first time you've lived. It's just one among a vast branching network of possibilities. From this perspective, your life isn't singular. It's one thread in a tapestry woven from infinite variations. The version of you watching this right now feels like the original, but so does every other version in its own universe. None of them can tell they're not the first. Each one experiences life as if it's brand new. Neuroscience also adds to the puzzle. Consciousness is still one of the greatest mysteries in science, but research suggests it arises from complex interactions between neurons in the brain. If consciousness is an emergent property, then in theory, any system complex enough could develop awareness. This raises the possibility that consciousness could arise again, in different forms, at different times, under different conditions. And if consciousness can reappear, is it truly experiencing life for the first time, or is it part of a recurring pattern written into the laws of physics? Another angle is the concept of entropy, the measure of disorder in a system. Entropy tends to increase, driving the arrow of time forward. But in rare cases, systems can locally decrease in entropy, creating order. Life itself is an example of this, a highly ordered structure in a universe that trends toward chaos. If the laws of physics allow for the spontaneous emergence of order, then life, and even conscious life, may keep arising again and again. Each time, it would feel like the first, because each arrangement of matter is fresh and unaware of its predecessors. But this doesn't diminish the uniqueness of your experience. Even if another version of you exists, or even if your life repeats infinitely, the fact remains that the consciousness you are experiencing right now is yours. No one else can feel it, live it, or know it from the inside. The first-person perspective you carry is absolutely unique in this moment, regardless of whether it has happened before elsewhere. Consider an analogy. Every snowflake is made of water molecules, and countless snowflakes fall each winter. Many of them share similar patterns, but no two are exactly the same. Even if the universe could produce a duplicate of you, it doesn't erase the reality of your presence here and now. You are a snowflake in the storm of existence, unique, fleeting, and extraordinary. Some thinkers extend this idea into metaphysics, asking whether consciousness itself is fundamental to the universe. If awareness is not just a byproduct of matter, but a basic aspect of reality, then perhaps consciousness flows through many forms, entering and exiting bodies across time and space. In that sense, your awareness may not be experiencing life for the first time. It may be part of a continuous stream of existence, taking on new perspectives with each life. This is not just philosophy. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics, like Pansychism, suggest that consciousness could be a fundamental property of the universe, present even at the smallest scales. If that's true, then life as you know it is one expression of an ongoing universal consciousness. The idea that you are living for the first time might simply be an illusion created by memory and identity. Another thought experiment can help illustrate this. Imagine you wake up with no memory of your past. You would feel like you were experiencing life for the first time, even if you had lived decades before that moment. In a sense, this is what birth is like. You arrive without memory of whatever came before, and so it feels like the beginning. But the absence of memory doesn't mean there was nothing before. It just means you don't have access to it. The same may apply to your current life. You may feel like it's your first, but that may simply be because your memories don't stretch beyond this incarnation. All of this circles back to one central point. The question of whether you are experiencing life for the first time may not have a definitive answer. It may depend on how you define first. From the standpoint of your personal memory, yes, this is your first. From the standpoint of physics, probability and recurrence, perhaps not. You could be part of an infinite cycle, a recurring pattern, or a branching multiverse. But from the standpoint of your consciousness, right now, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you are here, awake, aware, and alive. And that is something no repetition, no recurrence, and no infinite variation can diminish. If you've ever wondered whether the sense of you is fixed, permanent, and singular, modern neuroscience and psychology would challenge that assumption. The very thing you identify as yourself, the continuity of memory, personality, and perspective, is in many ways an emergent phenomenon. It is not as solid as it feels, Instead, it's more like a constantly updating story the brain tells itself, woven together moment by moment from electrical signals, chemical exchanges, and fragments of remembered experience. This has major implications for our central question: are you experiencing life for the first time? If you are essentially a narrative structure that is rebuilt from neural activity, then what grounds do we have to say this particular story is genuinely unique or entirely original? Start with memory. One of the reasons we feel anchored in time is because we can recall a string of moments and place them in sequence. We know who we were yesterday because we can access stored impressions of our thoughts and actions. But memory is not a flawless archive, it is reconstructive. Every time you remember an event, your brain actively rebuilds it, often altering details based on new experiences or emotions. Studies using brain imaging have shown that the same neural circuits used to remember the past are also engaged when imagining the future. That overlap suggests memory is less about storing the past and more about simulating possible versions of reality. If memory is that flexible, the continuity of self may be far more fragile than it feels. Then there is perception. Right now, as you listen, your senses are transmitting enormous streams of raw information into your brain. Yet you are not aware of most of it. Your nervous system filters, edits, and compresses the flood into a manageable model of the world. Vision, for example, is not a perfect record of light entering the eyes. It's a construction filled with blind spots, assumptions, and predictive guesses. When you move your eyes rapidly from one spot to another, you should technically see a blur, but your brain erases it, stitching together a seamless picture. That means the life you think you are experiencing is already a curated version of what's out there. The direct experience of reality is mediated, reconstructed, and at times fabricated to maintain the illusion of stability. This raises a fascinating possibility. If life is always filtered and reconstructed, then perhaps there is no clear sense in which it is ever a first time. Every experience is shaped by countless unconscious predictions based on what came before. Your brain is not simply recording events as they happen, it is constantly anticipating them. From a neuroscientific standpoint, you are living partly in the present and partly in a forecast of the next millisecond. In other words, your conscious life is always slightly ahead of itself. This predictive coding means what you think of as your first time encountering something may already be informed by traces of previous patterns. Psychology adds another layer. Carl Jung proposed the existence of a collective unconscious, an inherited reservoir of archetypes and motifs that show up in dreams, myths, and stories across cultures. Even if you have never directly lived certain experiences, echoes of them may still shape your imagination. Consider the universal themes of heroism, birth, death, betrayal, and transformation. These emerge in literature and art across civilizations with little direct contact. Jung believed these were not coincidences, but evidence of shared psychic structures passed down through humanity. If that is true, then the question of whether this is your first time living could be reframed. Perhaps what you are experiencing is not purely yours, but an ancient storyline resurfacing through your individual consciousness. Meanwhile, neuroscience has begun to map how identity shifts under altered states of consciousness. Psychedelics, meditation, sensory deprivation, and even intense stress can dissolve the boundaries of the self. Under such conditions, people often report a feeling of timelessness or connection to something larger. The ordinary sense of being a single individual moving through a linear timeline collapses, replaced by an impression of being part of a greater whole. Brain scans reveal that in these moments, activity in the default mode network, a set of regions involved in self-referential thinking, decreases. the self becomes quieter, less dominant. When this happens, the idea of experiencing life for the first time may lose its meaning, because there is no longer a clearly defined you to measure a before and after. Philosophically, this leads us into the territory of personal identity over time. Thinkers like John Locke suggested that continuity of memory is what makes someone the same person from one moment to the next. But as we've seen, memory is flawed and malleable. Others, like Derek Parfit, argued that identity might not even be what matters. Instead, what matters is psychological connectedness, the degree to which your present thoughts, intentions, and feelings relate to those of your past and future selves. In that sense, firstness could be a sliding scale. Some moments might feel like truly new beginnings because they break so drastically from the patterns of your past, while others might feel like echoes of experiences you can't quite name. It's also worth looking at how children experience life. For a newborn, nearly everything is new. The first time they see a face, hear language, or taste food, the brain is flooded with raw information that will later become familiar. Adults often describe watching a child encounter something simple, like a bubble or a shadow, with pure amazement. This sense of novelty fades as the brain becomes efficient at recognizing patterns. But here is the twist. Neuroscientists suggest we can recover aspects of that first-time perception through deliberate attention. Practices like mindfulness train the brain to suspend automatic judgments and approach experiences with fresh eyes. In doing so, we are not literally living for the first time, but we can recreate the intensity and wonder that first encounters bring. Cultural perspectives also complicate the picture. In Hindu and Buddhist traditions, life is not experienced once, but in cycles of reincarnation. Each existence is both new and deeply tied to the ones before. Karma, the accumulation of actions and intentions, threads lives together across time. You may not remember a past existence, but its momentum could shape the one you are living now. Western philosophy, by contrast, has often emphasized individuality and a single lifetime, but even there, echoes of eternal recurrence appear in thinkers like Nietzsche. His idea was that the universe and all its events repeat infinitely. If that were true, you would live this exact life again and again, not only once. In such a framework, first time becomes meaningless. Every moment has already happened and will happen again. Even modern cosmology nudges us toward this unsettling territory. The concept of a multiverse, while speculative, suggests that countless variations of you may exist simultaneously in other universes, each experiencing life with slight differences. From that perspective, this may be the first time in this universe, but not the first time universally. Parallel realities expand the question of identity across dimensions, challenging the neat boundaries of one beginning and one end. So where does this leave us? The scientific view shows that memory is not permanent, perception is constructed, and selfhood is fluid. Psychology hints that our experiences may carry traces of humanity's collective memory. Philosophy challenges whether identity itself is what matters. Spiritual traditions suggest we are caught in cycles or repetitions far larger than one lifetime. Altogether, this paints a picture in which firstness is not absolute. Instead, it may be relative, contextual, and even illusory. You might be experiencing life for the first time in one sense, but in another, you are reliving ancient patterns written into the mind, body, and cosmos. And yet, even if this is not your first time, the mystery of consciousness ensures that it always feels like it is. Each moment arises freshly, filled with sensations and thoughts that cannot be perfectly replicated. This paradox of being both unique and possibly recurring is at the heart of the human experience. It is what makes the question worth asking, even if it cannot be answered definitively. The more deeply you look into the question of whether you are experiencing life for the first time, the more it begins to feel less like a yes or no puzzle and more like a prism, refracting into countless possibilities depending on how you turn it. In the last part, we explored the neuroscience of memory, the psychology of archetypes, and the philosophy of identity. Now, let's widen the lens to consider how physics, biology, and cosmology might intersect with this question. Because if reality itself is stranger than it seems, then the very framework that defines a first time could be incomplete. Consider time itself. Physics doesn't treat time the way we intuitively experience it. To you, the present seems to flow. Yesterday slips into memory, tomorrow hasn't arrived, and now is the only thing you truly have. But according to Einstein's theory of relativity, time is not a flowing river. Instead, it is part of a four-dimensional space-time fabric, where past, present, and future all coexist. This is sometimes called the block universe view. From this perspective, your life is not unfolding moment by moment. It is already laid out in its entirety, from birth to death. You are simply moving through it, experiencing one slice at a time. If this is true, then in a sense, you are not living life for the first time or the last time. You are always embedded within it, eternally present in every moment that already exists. Your birth, your experiences, and even your final breath are timelessly inscribed into the fabric of reality. Now consider quantum mechanics, where probability reigns over certainty. At the smallest scales of existence, particles don't exist in fixed states until they are observed. Instead, they exist in superpositions, multiple possibilities simultaneously. When observation occurs, the wave of probabilities collapses into a single outcome. Some physicists have speculated that consciousness itself might play a role in this collapse, although this remains highly debated. If true, then every conscious moment you experience could be the selection of one branch of possibility from a vast tree of potential realities. And here is where it gets fascinating. If infinite branches exist, then versions of you may already be experiencing countless other variations of this life. In some sense, this moment is both the first time and not the first time. It is new for you here, but other versions of you may be living it elsewhere right now. Biology, too, adds its perspective. The building blocks of your body are ancient. The atoms in your cells, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, were forged in the hearts of stars billions of years ago. When those stars exploded, their material scattered into space, eventually coalescing into planets, oceans, and eventually life. So while you may think of yourself as a new being, every atom within you has been circulating through the universe for eons. The water in your bloodstream may once have flowed through the veins of dinosaurs. The calcium in your bones may have been part of a mountain range long before humans existed. In that sense, you are not experiencing life for the first time. You are the latest arrangement of matter and energy that has been cycling through forms since the dawn of the cosmos. Even DNA carries echoes of deep repetition. The instructions that shape your body and mind are the result of billions of years of evolution. Traits that helped your ancestors survive were passed down, refined, and preserved in the double helix of your genes. Some of your reflexes, instincts, and predispositions are not yours in the personal sense, but inherited responses programmed across generations. The fear of snakes or the calming effect of a mother's voice are ancient biological scripts. When you feel them, you are reliving experiences that countless humans before you also felt. In that light, your life may not be entirely original. It may be a continuation of ancestral memory coded into biology. Let's also consider dreams. Every night, when you fall asleep, your brain shifts into a state where reality is reconstructed in fluid, symbolic ways. Neuroscientists suggest dreams help consolidate memory, process emotions, and simulate potential future scenarios. But many traditions, from indigenous cultures to Tibetan Buddhism, treat dreams as more than private brain activity. They see them as portals to other realms, places where the boundaries between lives blur. In dreams, you might find yourself in unfamiliar landscapes, meeting people you've never seen, living stories that feel deeply significant. If consciousness is not confined to one timeline, then perhaps dreams are reminders that your awareness stretches beyond this particular incarnation. Each dream might be a flicker of memory from other existences, making your current life feel less like a first and more like a continuation. There is also the striking phenomenon of déjà vu, the uncanny sense that you have lived a moment before, even when you know it is impossible. Neuroscience offers explanations involving glitches in the brain's memory system, but the intensity of the experience often makes people wonder if it reveals something deeper. Could déjà vu be the mind brushing against echoes of parallel lives? Could it be a momentary overlap between timelines, a reminder that what you are experiencing now is not entirely new? If so, then déjà vu might be evidence that the boundary between first and repeat is far more porous than it seems. Now think about the idea of eternal recurrence, introduced by Friedrich Nietzsche. He asked, what if every moment of your life repeats endlessly, again and again, throughout eternity? Not in a metaphorical way, but literally, every breath, every thought, every heartbreak, every joy, looping forever. If that were the case, then nothing you experience is new. It has already happened and will happen again infinitely. Nietzsche presented this not just as a thought experiment, but as a challenge. If you had to live this life eternally, would you embrace it fully or despair at its repetition? This perspective turns our question inside out. Instead of asking whether you are experiencing life for the first time, it asks whether you can live in such a way that you would gladly relive it forever. There's also the simulation hypothesis, which proposes that our reality might be a highly advanced simulation created by a future civilization. If true, then your experiences could be part of a program, repeated endlessly across different simulations. Maybe you are the first run of this version of the program, or maybe you are the millionth iteration. Perhaps every life is a test, replayed until certain conditions are met. In this framework, your life might feel original to you, but it could be part of a grand design that has unfolded countless times before. From a psychological standpoint, humans are constantly grappling with novelty and repetition. Our brains crave newness, but also rely on familiarity. Too much repetition leads to boredom, while too much unpredictability leads to anxiety. This balance means that life always oscillates between firsts and repeats. The first kiss, the first heartbreak, the first time you step into a new place, these moments imprint deeply. But as they repeat, they shift into patterns, becoming both familiar and strange. In that rhythm, you may be experiencing both first and not first simultaneously, depending on the scale you look at. A conversation may be new in detail, but ancient in structure. A day may be unique in sequence, but familiar in feeling. Cosmology pushes this even further. Some models of the universe propose that time is cyclical, with universes expanding and contracting in infinite cycles. If so, then your very existence may reoccur endlessly across cosmic eras. You might live this exact life in another universe billions of years from now, without any awareness of its repetition. The universe itself could be replaying variations of existence, and you are one pattern in that infinite cycle. In such a reality, the idea of first becomes almost irrelevant. Every life is both original and repeated, depending on the scale of perspective. Yet for all these perspectives, neuroscience, psychology, physics, spirituality, there is one undeniable fact: the feeling of immediacy. Whatever the deep metaphysical truth may be, right now you are experiencing this moment as if it were fresh. The sound of these words, the thoughts moving through your mind, the sensations of your body, all of it arises in a way that feels unrepeatable. Even if you have lived infinite lives before, even if your atoms have circulated through countless forms, even if you are part of an eternal cycle, the present remains alive in its uniqueness. That is the paradox. It may not be your first time in the grand scheme of things, but it is always your first time in the immediacy of now. To dig into this, let's look at how the nature of memory, genetics, and even consciousness itself might blur the boundaries between a first-time life and one that has been lived before in some other way. Your sense of uniqueness, the idea that you are you, and that your life has never existed before, feels unquestionable. But what if that feeling is partly constructed? Neuroscience shows us that memory isn't a flawless recording system. Rather, it's more like a reconstruction, built fresh each time you recall an event. That means your sense of continuity is pieced together from fragments, not from a perfect archive. If memory itself is prone to illusions, then the idea that your life is a single, linear, first-time event might be more fragile than it seems. Consider genetics. When you were born, you inherited DNA that carries instructions shaped by billions of years of evolution. That DNA is not new to you. It's ancient, copied, and passed through unbroken chains of reproduction. You contain genetic patterns that once animated trilobites crawling across the sea floor, reptiles basking in prehistoric swamps, and countless ancestors who lived and died long before history was written. Each time DNA replicates, it's not identical, but it's close enough that deep structures persist. From this perspective, your body is not appearing for the first time. It's the latest expression of an ancient continuity. The atoms in your body have been recycled through stars, oceans, animals, and plants. The carbon in your DNA, the calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood. All of it has lived many lives before yours. Physically speaking, you are an iteration of matter, energy, and genetic design that has been through countless rounds of existence. But does that mean you, specifically, are experiencing life again? Philosophers and psychologists sometimes explore the idea of archetypes, universal patterns of thought and behavior that appear across cultures and eras. Carl Jung suggested these archetypes are inherited aspects of the human psyche, timeless structures that guide dreams, myths, and personal development. If these archetypes really do live in all humans, then the dramas you enact in your own life, falling in love, searching for meaning, confronting mortality, are not being lived for the first time. They've been lived by countless others, and they echo through your experiences. In a way, your life may feel unique only because it's wrapped in the specifics of your personality and culture. But beneath that uniqueness lies a repeating pattern that is as old as humanity. Now think about déjà vu, the eerie sense that you've lived a moment before. Neuroscience explains this as a glitch in memory processing, when the brain accidentally files a new experience as if it were a memory. But to many people, déjà vu feels like evidence of something deeper, a sign that life may not be entirely new. that perhaps some part of awareness has walked this path before. Mystical traditions across the world, from Hinduism to certain schools of Buddhism to New Age philosophies, propose reincarnation, the idea that consciousness passes through cycles of birth and rebirth. If such cycles exist, then this life may not be your first, but simply the latest in a long series of incarnations. Science, of course, cannot confirm reincarnation, but what science does show is that consciousness is intimately tied to the brain, and yet the brain itself is not a closed system. It's open to the world, constantly exchanging matter and energy with its environment, constantly updating based on interactions. From this angle, your mind is not an isolated first-time entity. It's a continuation of countless influences. Even if reincarnation in the literal sense isn't real, consider the idea of cultural reincarnation. Through language, stories, art, and traditions, the thoughts and feelings of people long dead live again in your mind. When you read a book written centuries ago, you are channeling the consciousness of someone who lived a completely different life, and in a sense, you're experiencing part of their life again through your own awareness. The uniqueness of your life is constantly braided with the recycled lives of others. Your thoughts, too, may not be entirely yours. Research in psychology shows that much of human cognition is unconscious, shaped by inherited instincts and social conditioning. This suggests that what you think of as your first-time perspective is actually a tapestry woven from countless influences before you. The question of whether you're experiencing life for the first time also leads us into physics. The conservation of energy tells us that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It only changes form. The energy animating you right now has existed since the birth of the universe. It has powered stars, storms, and living organisms before flowing into you. Consciousness may be more complex than mere energy, but if everything that makes up your existence has been here before, then what you're living through might be a reconfiguration rather than a brand new event. In this sense, life is like a symphony where instruments are reused, melodies repeat, and variations are played endlessly. You might be hearing your own theme for the first time, but the music itself has been playing since the beginning. Finally, there's the perspective of the block universe from physics. If time is not flowing, but instead exists as a complete structure, past, present, and future all equally real, then your life isn't unfolding for the first time. It simply exists as part of the eternal fabric of space-time. Every moment you experience is fixed, already woven into the universe. From this view, the question of whether it's your first time is almost meaningless, because time itself doesn't repeat or progress, it simply is. You're not going through life for the first time. You're inhabiting the only version that has ever existed forever. We've circled this question from many directions, through neuroscience, genetics, philosophy, quantum physics, cosmology, and spirituality, and every path leads to the same place, a paradox. On one hand, everything about you is a continuation, a recycling of matter, energy, and patterns that existed long before you. On the other hand, no one has ever lived the specific combination of experiences, thoughts, and feelings that you call your life. This tension is what makes your existence both ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. To explore this paradox fully, let's linger on the deeper implications of what it means to live as though you're here for the first time, even if you're not. The sensation of novelty, the feeling that you are encountering the world fresh, is central to consciousness. Neuroscience suggests that the brain is a prediction machine, always anticipating what comes next based on past experience. When reality matches prediction, the brain relaxes, but when something unexpected happens, your awareness sharpens. These unexpected events are what make life feel vivid, memorable, and new. Whether or not your existence has been lived before in some other form, your consciousness interprets novelty as if it were the first time. This explains why, even though the atoms in your body are ancient and the genetic code you carry has been passed down countless generations, your experience feels like an original event. The brain is designed to privilege the now, but novelty can also be deceptive. Imagine that you are walking down a street in a city you've never visited before, and suddenly you're overwhelmed with the sense that you've been here before. That's déjà vu, a trick of memory that blurs the line between first time and repeat experience. Science tells us it's the brain misfiring, storing the present moment as a memory before it has fully registered. Yet the effect is powerful because it hints at the possibility of recurrence, of having walked this road in another time or another version of existence. Whether it's a cognitive glitch or a glimpse into something deeper, déjà vu forces you to question what it means to experience something for the first time. In the broader philosophical picture, your life could be seen as a thread in a tapestry of repeating patterns. Think of the archetypal stories that appear across cultures: the hero's journey, the trickster, the wise elder, the rebirth. These stories are not new, they've been told for thousands of years. Yet every time they're lived or retold, they feel fresh because they're experienced from a different perspective. Your life could be part of this larger rhythm, playing out universal themes through the specifics of your individuality. From this perspective, life is both repetition and first-time experience, simultaneously ancient and brand new. Physics offers another lens. The second law of thermodynamics tells us that entropy, the measure of disorder, always increases. From the standpoint of physics, every moment of your life is unique because the arrangement of atoms, particles, and energy will never be exactly the same again. The air you breathe, the signals firing in your neurons, the flow of time itself, these are configurations that cannot repeat precisely. So even if you've lived a million lives before, none of them can ever be identical to this one. Entropy guarantees uniqueness, even in a universe of endless cycles. Quantum physics complicates things further. In the many worlds interpretation, every possible outcome of every event splits into its own universe. That means there are countless versions of you, all living variations of your life simultaneously. From that perspective, you're both living life for the first time and infinitely many times. In one universe, you're having this exact thought. In another, you never encountered this question at all. The multiverse suggests that first time and repeat are not opposites, but overlapping possibilities. On the spiritual side, traditions like Hinduism and Buddhism teach reincarnation and karma, where each life is shaped by the actions of previous ones. Whether or not you believe in reincarnation, the metaphor is compelling. Your actions ripple forward, influencing not only your own future, but the lives of others. Each decision you make is both the end of something old and the beginning of something new. In that sense, your life is always a mixture of repetition and first experience. You inherit the past, but you also create something original with it. So what does this mean for you right now? It means that whether or not this is your first time experiencing life, it feels like it is. And that feeling is the foundation of how you navigate existence. Every sunrise looks new, even though it has happened billions of times before. Every breath you take feels fresh, though the oxygen molecules have circulated through uncountable organisms. Every choice you make feels unique, even if it echoes choices made by people throughout history. Life is not about proving whether it's your first time. It's about recognizing the gift of immediacy, the vividness of now. This brings us back to the question that started it all. Are you experiencing life for the first time? Scientifically, probably not. Your body and mind are continuations of ancient processes. Cosmologically, you're part of an eternal unfolding where matter and energy endlessly recycle. Spiritually, many traditions suggest you've been here before and will return again. But subjectively, yes. From your perspective, this moment is new, unrepeatable, and yours alone. That is the paradox. You are both eternal and temporary, recycled and original, repeating and brand new. And maybe that's the answer. The truth isn't one or the other, it's both. You are the universe experiencing itself again. But for you, it's always the first time. That's why life feels so immediate, so fragile, and so important. You carry the echoes of everything that came before, but you also shine with the singularity of the present moment. No one else will ever see the world exactly as you do, right now. That uniqueness is what makes your experience matter, even in a universe filled with repetition. As we close tonight, let yourself sit with this mystery. You may never know for certain whether this is your first time or your thousandth, but you can know this. It feels real, it feels new, and it feels alive. And in the end, maybe that's all that matters. Thank you for joining me here, in this space of wonder and curiosity. May your thoughts drift gently, your mind feel expansive, and your dreams take you deeper into the mystery of existence. Good night.